Good afternoon, everyone. So hope you are reading newspapers on a regular basis. Now, have you seen this particular article? India is now ahead of China in financial inclusion metrics. See, all such data is very important for you to write in the answers. These are called as value additions. Now, what is financial inclusion? How is it useful for UPSC?
Sir, inclusive growth and GS3.
What is financial inclusion normally? What is the definition of the term financial inclusion? Any idea?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. When
It
each
is
and every
bringing the
person,
unorganized sector into banking.
when each and every person is able to access all the financial institutions facilities, it can be termed as financial inclusion.
So financial inclusion simply means the term where everybody have access to formal banking channels. Formal banking channels. There are informal banking channels and there are formal banking channels. Middlemen. So if I am going to the bank or getting access to any kind of formally recognized institutions, that is financial inclusion. So what happens when a society gets higher financial inclusion? Any scheme, any program for financial inclusion? Have you heard in the last 2 months of your preparation any term which is for financial inclusion, any scheme by Government of India? Sorry? Product linked incentive scheme is totally for industrialization and developing exports.
It is
Jan Dhan accounts, simple, right? The more bank accounts, the better. So zero frill bank accounts, zero balance bank accounts. All these are things. All these postal banks, payment banks. All these are to promote what? Financial inclusion. That means more persons should have bank accounts. So Government of India also has created multiple schemes. One is business correspondents. Yes, we have different types of banks, scheduled commercial banks, regional rural banks, payment banks. Yes or no? Now there is a new kind of bank. What is it? Neo banks. What are neo banks? NEO, neo.
Bandhan Bank example.
Bandhan is a microfinance institute elevated to the level of bank to bring more women into financial sector. That is, Bandhan is a good example for financial inclusion, but Bandhan is not example for neo bank. What is neo bank? Ever heard?
So,
We discussed this in
so
rural
is
credit.
it like where the extreme areas when the bank is not able to set, a person can move ahead?
That is banking correspondent. Banking correspondent means a person will go to the rural area, do all the banking details, come back and update the bank accounts. That is banking correspondent. Neo bank is a traditional bank linked with a startup. Fi app is the best example for neo banking. That means traditional banks will have one-click access to bank accounts. You can open your bank account online. You don't have to visit a bank. Even KYC norms are done online. All these things will add your financial inclusion. When a society has more financial inclusion, it can also be linked to women empowerment.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
That means women will have more freedom. Yesterday we have seen Project Sampurna article, self-help groups. There also more financial inclusion will help the women. DBT transfers, financial inclusion will help, right? Yes, usage will increase. Like this, financial inclusion have a lot of advantages. You need to identify what are the steps taken by government to promote financial inclusion. Clear? Any prelims question in that article?
So CCI,
Good.
CCI is power.
Hmm. So whenever you see a body, particular institution, organization, you have to recollect your GS paper to syllabus copy. Now tell me, how do you link CCI to your syllabus copy?
Various statutory bodies or constitutional bodies.
Sorry? In syllabus. Sorry? How? Exactly the line, right? Regulatory bodies. There is a term called as regulatory bodies. What is regulatory body? A body which will supervise, manage. Competition Commission of India is the single biggest regulatory body in relation to business practices. Why? Mergers, acquisition, trade practices. All these practices need Competition Commission of India. Is it a statutory body or a constitutional body?
Statutory body.
Sure. How? How do you know it's a statutory body?
So there is a constitutional body is 11 or
So
there
it's
is a
not in
list.
that list, so it may not be constitutional body.
It is a regulatory body.
It is a regulatory body. Competition Commission of India Act created this Competition Commission of India, so it's a statutory body, right? In the month of May, you will be taking the same institute materials and you will be mugging up the same thing. So don't worry. If you are not attending the class, you will prepare anyhow in the May. Not you. In general, I'm saying. In May, anyhow, you will be mugging up the same list. If you are attentive enough, from day one, you will learn slowly. One day injection. Or else, Bawarchi is giving 1+1 biryani free offer. What will you do? You cannot eat all the biryanis in one day, right? Yes or no? Daily is much better. Competition Commission of India. How many of you have heard the term country of origin? Why is it in the news?
Recently, e-commerce.
Yes, please.
Government mentioned e-commerce should reach everywhere as what is the country of concern.
Very nice. So why is it in the news? E-commerce, government has regulated all the e-commerce websites should compulsorily mention the country of origin. Each and every good has to be, the country of origin has to be mentioned. Next. What are INVITs and REITs? If you need full forms, they are here. Infrastructure investment trusts, real estate investment trust. Why are they needed? Or in which context have you heard about them? Have you heard about them?
National monetization pipeline.
National monetization. Sorry? GS2. This you will be hearing in GS3. Okay. Economy. Basically for infrastructure. PPP, public-private management, public-private partnership. So the concept being, government alone cannot spend all the money on infrastructural development. Government will encourage private parties to invest in infrastructure parties. How can they invest in private projects? These are the two mechanisms. That means, let's imagine high net worth individuals will come together, pool money, and they will put it in an investment trust. What will the investment trust do? It will invest in real estate. Real estate projects are long-term capital. To construct a highway, to construct an airport, it will take a huge amount of time. Yes or no? Stock market is, or mutual fund is also for long-term investments. Now, what is the major thing that government is doing? Government is trying to bring in foreign portfolio investors and allow them to invest in InvITs and REITs. Okay. Now, how many of you know the definition of foreign portfolio investor? Please raise your hand. I think I have discussed that multiple times in the class. Foreign portfolio investor. Which paper? GS paper 3. Automatically paper 3. Now, who will tell me? Yes. Hmm. Hmm.
We discussed this while differentiating between FDI and
Hmm.
portfolios.
Hmm.
FDI is when the investment exceeds some around
Now, first of all, tell me what do you understand by the term portfolio? Portfolio is not a UPSC term. Portfolio is a common general term. Sorry. Acha, you are talking in the cabinet terms. Like portfolio has been allocated defense. Okay, fine. Apart from that,
So in a particular area.
normally when we talk about wealth management portfolio, that means what are your assets? What is your portfolio in relation to asset management? How much do you have in gold? How much do you have in cash? How much do you have in land? So you cannot invest only in land, gold, or silver, right? You will diversify your portfolio. That means you have stock markets, shares, mutual funds, gold, silver, land, paintings, like this different portfolio is there, right? Now, for a foreigner who wants to come to India and invest in multiple shares, mutual funds, or other secondary markets or primary markets, for him the portfolio is foreign portfolio investment. Up to 10% of shares, if he's investing up to 10% of shares in any one company or in different companies, that collectively is known as foreign portfolio investment. That means, imagine this is a company, this yellow cap is 10%. So the foreigner can invest only till the yellow cap, that is 10% max. If he invests beyond 10%, that will become foreign direct investment. Okay, so up to 10% if you're investing, that is called as foreign portfolio investment. Why government is easing all these things? We need more money. Apart from government spending, private spending, if collectively together, then we will kickstart the investment cycle. Boom. Yes or no? Not reading newspapers. I have one more question I forgot to ask you. I think this. What is your opinion on this? This article.
judicial activism.
So again, you have basic terminology, basic ideology, right? You have attended the classes more or less for 1 month. So you know some terms. So when you look at that particular article, what is your constitution telling you, or what is your brain telling you? Nobody is punishing you, nobody is judging you. If you utter your mouth and open say gulab jamun, okay, it makes no sense. Wrong answer also makes no sense. Okay, but you have to say something, you have to think. What is the first keyword that comes to your mind when you look at this particular article?
Separation of power.
Separation of powers. Okay.
Retired judge.
What is it technically called as? What is it technically called as? Whatever you have said, what is it technically called as? Politics classes are done, right? Yes. Where is that terminology? I don't hear that terminology anywhere. Vijay, please mute, disable your camera. Yeah. No. Yeah, not that Vijay, that different one. Yes. But where is the terminology, people? Separation of powers. Whatever he's saying is separation of powers, right? Judiciary, executive, legislature, three separate things. Who is entering into whose work now?
Judiciary is entering.
Judiciary is trying to enter into executive works. What is that called as? Judicial activism or overreach?
Activism.
Here is it.
Here
I will. So now we are coming into polity terminology. Now confusion over polity terminology, right? Activism and overreach. What are the two different things? What is difference between activism and overreach?
So activism basically means when the legislature makes any constitution, then Supreme Court has right to intervene if there is any derogation of rights.
Come again.
So if the parliament is making any laws, so Supreme Court has right to intervene.
It's his job, right?
Yes.
And then how is it activism or overreach?
No, sir. It is.
So काम ही वही है.
It usually happens when executive fails to
Yes.
do their duty properly.
Hmm.
Then to bring out the justice, whatever the judiciary does can be termed as judicial activism.
So activism means what? I'm interested in something. For example, Menaka Gandhi is an activist for what? Animal rights. Yes or no? She is very interested in animal rights. Everybody have their own vested interests or personal interests. So this is interest. So if I'm proactively trying something, that is activism. See, judiciary focusing on one particular case is more or less activism. Why activism? That means executive. Here, police officers. Okay, so judiciary was keeping an eye on what police were doing. Judiciary was keeping an eye on what police were doing, right? So judiciary is doing its job. Police are doing their job. Nobody is touching anybody else's jobs. Okay, judiciary, legislative, executive. That is more or less activism. Why this particular case? There are 4 crore cases pending in the country. Yes or not? All levels, there are 4 crore cases pending in the country. Why is judiciary so interested in this particular case? Okay, that is kind of activism. Okay, why not other cases? Are you saying that police are efficient in elsewhere? Like in all the 27 states, the police are very efficient. Only in Uttar Pradesh, police are corrupt. Is that the message? No. Do you think police have always done the perfect job? No. Bona fide or malified intentions. That means genuinely they are unable to do their jobs. Sometimes because of political masters, they are not doing their jobs. Either way, police are not allowed to do their jobs in most of the cases. Okay. Now, if Supreme Court is saying that you are not doing your jobs properly, I will appoint a ex-High Court judge. Okay. That is kind of entering into legislature's job. Whose job? Police officer job or the executive's job. That we can call as overreach. Yes or no? You can counter argue. Sir, police are not doing their job. The police are not doing their job. Judiciary is helping the police to do their job properly. What is wrong with that? Police are not doing their jobs. Okay. So small clarification. There are 2 cases here. What is one case? One case is alleged that Minister of State, his son has SUVs and 3 people were killed because of the SUVs. Okay. When the SUVs have killed some people, mob got angry and mob lynching has happened and some people died in the mob lynching. So there is one case of mob lynching and there is one more case against the minister's sons. Supreme Court is saying I don't want to mix these 2 cases. So that is why I am making sure that there is a whole new line. Yes or no? Okay. Tomorrow will Supreme Court appoint a new retired judge for Aryan Khan case? Day after tomorrow for Amravati, will it keep appointing all the retired people? Yes or no? Why not for a pickpocketer? He is also citizen of the country, right? You have to think about the long term. Why only this particular case? Right? See, the justice has been denied multiple times in this country. And I'm not saying that justice will be delivered even if Supreme Court is appointing a retired judge. But speaking purely from the interest of the institution point of view, I personally believe that this is judicial overreach. Okay, you are not doing any service to the nation by cherry picking the cases. Okay, what is the long-term reform? Police reforms. You are the Supreme Court. You ask the states why are they not implementing the Prakash Singh versus Union of India judgment? 7 principles were given way back in 2006. This is 2021. 15 years have passed. Your own judgment is not being implemented. If you want to chop a tree, you can cut it from multiple angles, right? If your interest is to make the system deliver the justice, why not interest from the right perspective? Police reforms can be invested. Yes. Next, the problem is we are having a very polarized society. Yes or no? We are having a very polarized society. If someone says, why Supreme Court is interested in Uttar Pradesh? Why Supreme Court is interested in Uttar Pradesh? Why not West Bengal? Yes or no? There is a case pending against Mamata Banerjee. Why not there? Yes. Why not some other thing? Like this, what about will come into the discussion? And the entire institution's reputation will be under suspicion. Okay. Here, institution is more important rather than the individuals. Yes or no? We have so many chief justices before this. We will have so many chief justices after this also. But the reputation of institution is more important. Clear? So that's one way to look at the things. Now I hope you understand what is separation of powers. Who gave separation of powers? Who recommended separation of powers? Whose concept is it? Political theory. I'm glad you didn't say Dadabhai Nauroji. I'm happy. Yes. Yes. Montesquieu. No, separation of power is not Montesquieu. You did not read. Or is it Dicey?
Dicey is rule of law.
Dicey is rule of law. You have read Dicey, but not Montesquieu.
Yes, I am Montesquieu.
Lakshmikant Pandey also like separation
Montesquieu.
is not there in Lakshmikant. I know. Okay, fine. So you get that right. The terminology is very important. You have to think in the terms of keywords, separation of powers and application, and how what is difference between judicial overreach, judicial activism, judicial radicalism is a new term, and there is one more term, judicial evasion. Okay. So multiple times Supreme UPSC has asked questions about judicial activism and all these things. You have to keep thinking about all these things. We'll see one more question. Why is Ministry of Home Affairs tasked to monitor foreign funds for NGOs? Asks Supreme Court. So what do you think about this? What is your understanding? Is it a right question or a wrong question? So in GS paper 2, you have one more term, which is relevant to that article.
Yes, sir.
Which word?
So different laws and statutes and issues arising out of it.
Better, we can do better. Yes. NGOs, it's mentioned in GS paper 2.
Yes.
Sure. Yes. Anything else?
All ministers and the departments of the government.
Okay. I'm looking for a specific word from the syllabus copy. Pressure groups. Is the term pressure groups mentioned in your syllabus
sir.
copy?
Yes, sir, yes, sir.
So normal NGOs are not a national security threat, are not a problem to the India, right? But there are vested interests which will come in the name of NGO and try to tarnish the name of the country.
Yes.
Yes or no? Or lobby against our national interests. For example, Kundankulam is a very good example. Kundankulam nuclear plant. These NGOs are, for example, one more example is religious conversions. Religious conversions have accelerated because the funds of NGOs were misused for religious conversions. So all these activities has to be tackled by the country, right? See, national security threat does not mean they will create new radical youth or anything. Even damaging the soft power of the country or image of the country in the eyes of the international perception is also a national security threat in one way or the other. So government of India has severely took this as a serious problem and tried to cut the fund of all the non-governmental organizations. Okay. Now the question is, Home Minister or Home Ministry is responsible for the security
Yes.
of the realm, home security. Yes or no? Okay. Ministry under FRC is the purpose of Financial Action Task Force. Financial Action Task Force is not under MHA, right? Okay, I will discuss. I understood the question. See, here, what we have to think logically is we work in silos in India. Silos means we have different hierarchies. Our right hand does not know what left hand is doing. Yes? No? Terror financing, fund flow, drug trafficking, and all these things are internal security threats. They directly come under Home Ministry. Okay, so the funds that flow, if logically speaking, are under Finance Minister, and the security has to be taken care by the Home Minister. Then it will be very, very complicated to coordinate. There will be tough war, or there will be liaison issues, or there will be overlapping powers. If all the powers are with Home Ministry itself, it can at least manage within the department. So that is a simple logic behind the Home Minister or Home Ministry over supervising these foreign contributions. Okay, see, just think about it. A NGO received a lot of money. It is pumping that money into some other activity, which will hurt India's interest. Whose responsibility? Home Ministry. But Finance Ministry has to inform the Home Ministry in the right time, coordinate in the right measure. Only then Home Ministry will kind of take some action. If there are delays, that might lead to some kind of new problems. Administrative issues. If everything is digitized in an ideal world, in an ideal country, all these things should have been streamlined very easily, but that is not the case. Logically speaking, Foreign Contribution Regulation Act is more or less happy with the political parties receiving foreign funding. Electoral
Yes,
bonds. Yes or no? So where is that foreign money coming from? Tomorrow, if we come to know that Dawood Ibrahim is also purchased electoral funds for BJP, that can happen, right? We don't know. So there are a lot of loopholes in that particular argument also. Yes. See, that money was even used for funding or supporting Naxalites. Or worst case scenario, I will tell you a simple example. So let's say there is no security threat. You are an NGO. You are working in Chhattisgarh, Dantewada area. Okay. You are trying to build a school, or you are trying to do some welfare activity. You have crores and crores of rupees. Naxals will come and threaten you. You have to pay some amount of rent. Okay, for protection money. To do NGO activities in these areas, okay, you have to pay certain amount of money to the Naxals. Indirectly, you are funding the Naxalites. Yes or no? So that is also a problem. Like this, there are a lot of complications which we don't even totally understand. At ground level, all these things are minuscule, but collectively they still create a problem for India, right? See, Naxalites might kill 3 soldiers or 3 police officers. That still looks like, a national security threat. Yes, that is actually national security threat. A police officer being killed by a Naxal group. That's a national security threat. Whose responsibility? Again, falls back on the shoulders of Home Ministry. Clear? Everything is interlinked. Again, I will take the side of Ministry of Home Affairs any given day in this particular topic, because it's not about this political party or that political party. It's about national security in truest of the sense. Yes.
So how can we move that to
Finance Ministry.
finance ministry and operational NGOs all are linked. You told us the finance ministry for some money. And Ministry of Home Affairs should take the decision.
Right now, Minister of Home Affairs is knowing about the money, it is taking the decision.
Yeah,
So things are
before that, the finance ministry is
from day one only, MHA is doing. Everything is under MHA. Everything is fine. Oh, I think the recent amendment, right? Okay. I understood. Yeah. So this ground reality, this coordination has been the issue. That is why it has been moved to
So
home.
that knowledge we should have before.
Hmm.
So how to get that knowledge?
Earlier, 2 separate things. Okay, right and left. Right. This is Finance Minister. This is Home Ministry. Coordination was an issue. Now I understood that coordination is an issue. I have moved this entire box into Home Ministry, right?
Yes.
So problem solved according to Home Ministry. Okay. Now, if I say that this should have this and this should have this, okay, then there should at least be a better coordinating mechanism. We don't have time for coordinating mechanisms. Throw everything under one thing. Or you can create dedicated cells, white collar crimes, dedicated channels for NGO. So it takes a lot of time and energy, right? Again, see, it depends on what you want to write ultimately in the mains answers. The moment I said national security, yes or no? Nobody can do anything. I can justify anything under the name of national security. Done. So that is exactly what the present government is doing. I don't. Yes. Have you read this article? Yes, sir. India must remain safe for diversity. What is the summary of the article? Any takeaways for your essay writing, for your overall understanding about India? What is soft power? Is India a soft power? How many of you think is India is a soft power? Knowing that India has soft power is one thing. India being a soft power is one thing. We use the India is a soft state as a negative tone. Okay, India using soft power is one thing. India being a soft power is one thing. Normally, there is soft power and hard power. Obviously, if there is something soft means there is also something hard power, right? Hard power means brute force, yes or no, or authoritarian things. Whereas soft power means slowly you are gaining the benefits using a lot of things like perception, image, movie, songs, culture. Yes. For example, South Korean culture is prevailing very quickly. South Korea is developing a lot of soft power. Yes or no? That is one way to look. America has a lot of soft power. That is one way to understand. India has a lot of soft power. So no matter where you go into the world, Indians are always viewed in a different perception. That Indians are good. Indians are having a certain kind of traits. So that kind of image is there on India. Yes or no? India is a beautiful country. All this is soft power. There is a perception. There is a very wonderful perception about India that is called as soft power. Okay, and Shashi Tharoor argues that most of it is a byproduct of the Nehruvian ideology. Most of it is a byproduct of Nehruvian ideology. If we take our immediate neighbors, okay, we have amended their they have amended their constitutions. They have changed their electoral styles multiple times. Pakistan had a constitution, military coup. Bangladesh is the same thing. Sri Lanka has changed its constitution. Nepal is changing its constitution. Their democracy is not deeply ingrained. If you take Winston Churchill, he prophesied that India will not survive for more than 5 years after independence. According to him, Indians are barbarians. After 1947, India will self-collapse within few years. Okay, but 75 years later, we are the third largest economy in the world. Yes or no? So if you think about it, all these were possible because of the institutionalization of democracy in the earlier days. Institutionalization of the democracy in the earlier days. What is institutionalization of democracy? Elections. The trust and respect in elections. Even Indira Gandhi, after emergency, lost the elections. She gave up her power very peacefully. Yes or no? Unlike the drama we have seen in West Bengal, where BJP was reluctant to accept that they lost. Okay, right? For last 17 years, general elections, we have seen transfer of power very easily. That is the single greatest achievement of institutionalization of democracy. I'm not saying Nehru's credit. I'm saying institution credit. Institutions are different from individuals. Yes or no? Institutional establishment is more important. So Indians, according to Ambedkar, are not having social morality, societal morality. We are not having societal morality. So Ambedkar says very strongly that Indians need to be taught societal morality. Our constitutional morality has to be deeply ingrained in the Indians. So Nehru has tried to do that through institutions. We talk in the secular terminology, or we talk in the institutional terminology, or we still respect the institutions only because of the foresight of Nehru. So India is a secular culture. All these things are good. Okay, but the problem is institutions are good, implementation is bad. That is where the word secular has become a taboo. I hope you understand. Yes or no? So secularism does not have a problem in this country. It's a wrong application of the secularism that led to creation of problems about the secularism. Say right wing calls libtards, seculars, liberal and bastards, liberal tards. Okay, so libtards, secular, okay, pseudo secular, anti-national, all these ideologies come only because of misapplication of the constitutional principles. Constitutional principles have no problem whatsoever. It's a definite misuse of these principles that led to the division in the societies, right wing and left wing. Obviously, if you are a liberal, think about it. You want Nehru story to be told, okay, but you want to, you don't want to even discuss about Savarkar. Okay, see, what is the definition of a liberal? What is the burden of a liberal? I may or may not like Savarkar, but if you want to discuss about Savarkar, Constitution gives you that liberty to discuss about Savarkar. Okay, because you are not even interested in implementing the liberal principles as liberal principles. That is why the term liberalism has become a taboo. The moment I say I'm intellectual, I'm liberal, okay, people assume wrong things. Why? Misuse. You are driving in a Benz car, okay, or you live in a very costly area, you have a very costly lifestyle, and all you talk about is poverty. There is a very famous quote, right? Amartya Sen is a professor who speaks about poverty drinking over $50 coffee. Yes or no? So that means it appears that you don't implement whatever you are thinking. I'm not saying you should move to Jharkhand, live in a hut, right? That is not the ideology, but application of all your ideologies tell the real story. Everybody has a vested interest. Nobody is doing anything for their own sake. Everybody has a agenda. Okay, So that is why the entire Gandhi Nehru thing has become a taboo. Okay. Yes. And thanks to his own son's, daughter and the lineage, the term Gandhi Nehru family has become a policy paralysis. We hate the hereditary politics and all these things only because of that particular family. So understand Nehru in a whole different light, right? So he's an institution builder, he's a nation builder. No matter how much you hate him, for 17 years he has ruled this country, and that establishment he has done, good and bad. Nehru has done blunders like Jammu and Kashmir, Sheikh Abdullah, or he has arrested Sheikh Abdullah. Then he has removed the Communist Party governance in Kerala. Okay, so Nehru have done a lot of blunders, including China. That plus he also built institutions. Institutions survived. His legacy will survive. I think in next 20 years, his Nehru will be cleansed. His legacy will be cleansed. I hope, right? Yes. Yes. After that 10 years, okay. We'll have a choice to debate. At least we will have the same liberal principles, right? We should be able to debate about Savarkar and Nehru freely. Yes. Yes. After that, there is no point, right? Good. I finally made that impact. Have you read this article?
Yes.
There are shades of equality. Again, see, the present government hates Nehru like anything. Everything is Nehru's fault. Okay, so you won't be getting any UPSC question about Nehru. So don't worry. So that's one simple understanding. But at the same time, you can throw as much dust as or anything on Gandhi, Nehru, all these people. But the simple thing is Sardar Patel. Yes or no? He was one of the foremost intellectuals. Yes, he and Nehru had a lot of disagreements, and they both had the civility to discuss in civilian terms or civic terms. They exchanged letters. They hated each other. They loved each other. Okay, but they also discussed in civil terms. They never throwed each other with the terms like anti-nationals. You may not like somebody, you may hate someone, but you can always be civil in hating someone. That civility is more or less lost in this country. Okay, the argumentative Indian is no longer existing. Either you take a stand or you don't take a stand, but you cannot have a liberal idea. The other day there was a wonderful article in Indian Express also, right, about Savarkar and Gandhi.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Savarkar hated co-worship or something like that. So will you be able to take Savarkar for his entirety, or you will cherry pick Savarkar? That was the most important question. Yes. In the same way, there are good qualities about Nehru which you can celebrate. There are bad things about Nehru which you can discuss, but you cannot whitewash history. You should not whitewash history. You have to take them in totality. Yes or no? When you cherry pick, that is when the problems will come into the picture. Clear? Yes. There are shades of equality. The summary of this article is what is affirmative action? What is the purpose of affirmative action?
Upliftment of vulnerable section.
Upliftment of the weakest within the group. That is affirmative action or positive discrimination. Everybody may or may not be having a same principle. Let's imagine there are 4 people in the room. There are 4 people in the room, and I have put a cake in the middle of the room. The cake is of 1 kg. The cake is of 1 kg. So how will you distribute the cake? By pieces. Very good. How much pieces? 250. First come first serve. There are only 4 sitting in a round table. 4 are present, 4 are in the round table. 4, why will they be fighting? Yes, please.
250 grams.
250 grams. 250 grams. I mean, you are assuming that there is a 1 kg cake, 4 people. That means 4 slices, 250 grams each. That itself is where we have the prejudice.
Yes.
Why do we have prejudice? We are assuming all the 4 are equal by default. Yes or no? Sir, you didn't say anything about terms and conditions, but that is exactly how society treats the affirmative action. Reservation means I treat SC means all SCs are 1. OBC means all OBCs are 1. the same case story will apply in the OBC also? Yes or no? Now imagine among the 4 people within the room, one is starved for last 7 days. He is not having any food for last 7 days. The other one is obese. Okay, he's having a lot of food. Okay, he's stuffed. He may not even want to eat the cake even if you offer him. Yes or no? It's like you joining a private school. You don't even want to entertain the idea of going to a government school. Why? You are stuffed. Yes or no? So we should remove the prejudices in the mind in the first place. We should not think that cake means 4 people means by default 4 pieces. In the reservation also, in affirmative action also, you should not treat everybody
Like
as one. You should not assume that everybody is one. Everybody will have inherent disadvantages. Let's imagine within OBC there is a community who are making a good amount of money, but they are socially treated backward. I hope you understand the difference, right? So money making or having doctors in a particular community automatically does not remove the social stigma. So social stigma needs a separate kind of treatment, empowerment. Like this, each and every group within the subgroups should be identified and empowered. Clear? If you don't do that, then universal generalization is not going to help anyone. Yes, according to Justice Rohini Committee report also, you must have seen in OBCs also, very few percentage of OBC groups are reaping all the reservations, whereas the majority are not even getting any reservations. So not all OBCs are equal. So there are layers within the layers. That layers have to be identified and they have to be empowered. So according to the authors, Kerala government is trying to do the same for minorities by providing more amount of scholarship to the minorities because they are the weakest sections of the society. Again, be very careful in remembering this. Sachar committee report is very old. Sachar committee report is very old. They mention a committee report here, that is Sachar committee report.
Yes, sir.
Where is it?
Under minority scholarship.
Yes, Sachar committee gave a report saying Muslims are the most backward community in India, even behind SCs and STs. They are not even empowered. Okay, we don't know the benchmarks they have taken. We don't have empirical data. That is why what gets measured gets improved. You have to have the constant latest data. The most latest data, the better, without any biases. Okay, clear? So there are counter arguments in some sections of the society which says Sachar committee report is not accurate. Okay, so that's just a small point I want you to notice. I hope you understood what I meant by this
Yes.
affirmative action, right? The cake example should be in your mind all the time. Don't assume affirmative action means by 4. By 4 is not equality. We need equity. Yes, equity is more important than equality. So if you are interested, you can read this particular infographic, police reforms, GS paper 2, how much police will actually work. Recently, a CRPF Jawan has killed his own batchmates. Mental fatigue is a very, very real thing. Burnout is a word that has been added to dictionary in the last few years. Mental burnout. That means you are so fatigued, you are tired. So on an average, the police constable works for 10 hours, 8 to 10 hours a day. There are recommendations for 8-hour shifts, 8, 8, 8. There should be 3 shifts, 8 hours only. You should work only for 8 hours. But in reality, they are forced to work for 10 to 14 hours. That is also a problem. When you work for 10 to 14 hours, you can understand the pressure. Yes. Sorry.
I say this. For working for 10 to 14. Pressure is it, so
Mental pressure will be very high. Yes. So for you, if anyone is having public administration as an optional, you can use a lot of data from this particular article. Yes. The Model Police Act encourages you to have a lot of breaks, sleeping times. Here. So GS paper 2 questions will come about police reforms. So I encourage you to keep looking at the infographics also occasionally, if not daily. Other articles. Best friends. All weather friends. China and Pakistan are all weather friends. So China has given a new vessel, naval vessel to Pakistan to patrol in Indian Ocean region. What is, why is it important for India?
Our maritime security is getting affected.
Our maritime security is getting affected. Okay. Or they are strategically empowering their own friendship. Yes or no? That can also be one dimension. Pakistan is getting empowered. What should be India's reaction?
Celebrate.
Yes. Get two more. Aircraft carriers or something and put one in the Arabian Sea permanently. Aircraft carrier is the highest grade of naval deterrence. You get one more aircraft carrier and put one in the Arabian Sea permanently. You are answering all the Pakistan and China's answers. So we should go for Atmanirbhar Bharat as soon as possible. Yes or no? And second thing, try to respond rather than react. Whenever somebody says something, right? Don't allow that thought into your brain. That is emotional intelligence, right? Yes. Next, Taiwan says capable of air and sea blockade. The other day I asked a simple question: is AUKUS accelerating the militarization of Indo-Pacific region? Is AUKUS accelerating the militarization of Indo-Pacific region? What is the first outcome of AUKUS? The tension between China and Taiwan has increased, and America is coming in the support of Taiwan. So as you can see, Taiwan says China is capable of blockading us in air and sea. So China is also doing a lot of cyber attacks on Taiwan. So imagine Taiwan is like Kashmir of China. Okay, so China is very skeptical about America's support to Taiwan. It has become a new flashpoint between USA and China. I think they have this air mapping, air defense zones, AIDZs. They are called as AIDZs. Okay, that means you cannot send a military plane into that particular area without the permission of the other country. So China is trying to provoke Taiwan. Okay, so all this will lead to Third World War. New theory. One more theory. 2025 Third World War. No? I'm planning. The other day I forgot to tell. We have also a chance of getting killed by asteroid.
So you're setting a timeline.
Asteroids, right? Armageddon movie.
This discussion is last year.
Near Earth objects are potentially near Earth objects will come and hit us and we might die. So we have multiple options: Third World War, nuclear weapons, asteroids,
Climate.
superbug, climate change. You can choose whatever you prefer. All the above. Sorry.
The final is 2050.
The deadline is 2050, not beyond that. See, I have problem with asteroid and the Third World War. Why? My intention is the planet to survive and the humans not to survive. So if asteroid hits or nuclear weapons hit, then the entire ecosystem is being destroyed. So there is no point in me supporting both those theories.
Then
Superbug, climate change. Superbug is the best case scenario. Climate change is last option. Which one?
Water war.
Water war. Third world. We will throw everything into Third World War. Nuclear weapons. Clear? Yes, Taiwan super China is capable of blockading the sea. And I think no articles yesterday. How many of you think demonetization is a good thing? How many of you don't have an idea of what demonetization is? No idea. Okay. How many of you have faced some hardship during demonetization? Medium. Yes. Paytm. ATM. I thought Paytm. Okay. So the only person I personally, as a joke, I can believe who benefited from demonetization is Vijay Shekhar Sharma.
Paytm.
He purchased a 90 crore apartment in Delhi after demonetization. If you don't know, just saying. Okay. 90 crore personal money. Yes, he purchased an apartment in Delhi. Okay, house in Delhi for 90 crores. Why in Delhi? I don't know. Right? If I have 90 crores, why will I purchase in that pollution chamber? What is the purpose? Now, tell me the technical term in relation to this particular statement. Collectively, if you have to give the term, whatever the theory he is trying to tell, or whatever the concept he is trying to tell, if you have to think in one term, what is that one word?
Persuasion.
Sorry? Imaginary? No.
Image building.
Image building? No. I have told you multiple times in the class. There is a phenomena. There is a terminology for the whatever we are seeing in the society right now. It's 2016 word of the year by Oxford Dictionary. Post-truth world. Post-truth world. The basic terminology is post-truth. What is post-truth? Post-truth is a perception. Post-truth is a society where people start believing things based on emotional arguments rather than on empirical matters or empirical data. Right? So what demonetization for India is a post-truth example. People no longer discuss demonetization in facts and data. They think in the terms of emotional arguments. Okay, that is a perfect example for understanding post-truth societies. Okay, and this is happening all over the world, not only in India. Everywhere people will discuss it in the terms of emotional arguments rather than in facts. If I tell them that RBI itself has given a report saying demonetization is more or less a failure, they will say still that black money is eradicated. Stone throwing in Jammu and Kashmir came down. Like this, they will try to justify certain things. That is known as post-truth world or post-truth societies. It's a very important thing. Why? We hear a lot of that in the society. Lot of concepts are running in the name of post-truth world. Pure emotions, no logic. There is a South Indian state chief minister, one chance. Yes or no? Yes. It does not have any empirical data. There is no political logic, but people will believe on emotions. Emotions will run the societies rather than ideology. Now, why is it very important? DPSP, you can think developing scientific temper. Everything has to be questioned. Buddha also says the same thing. Take the Majjhima Marga, question everything, be rational. So every time, unless and until you don't question something, okay, you will always believe the narration. Now, if a mains question comes, will you write demonetization is a failure? Most probably not. Why? You will take the stand of the government. Digital transactions have increased. Yes or no? Tax collection has increased. Cashless, less cash economy is being created. Black money has been removed. Naxal security threat has been neutralized. Naxals had a lot of black money. All that black money is destroyed. Yes or no? So these are all the advantages of demonetization. What will we not be discussing about? Slowdown of economy? Yes or no? Or coming back of all the black money in the white. Now, what percentage of Indian GDP is in black money?
There are a lot of calculations. Like 20%, some people say 40%.
Still, an idea sake, for idea sake, what is the percentage of black money in India in relation to GDP? 1% of GDP, 2% of GDP, 3% of GDP. How much black money do you think India have?
Oh, that's a wide.
10.
It's actually 10 to 120. The right answer is 10 to 120%. According to different estimates, 10% of Indian GDP is having black money. 120% of Indian GDP is black money. That means Indian economy is $6 trillion. $3 trillion is rotating in the name of black money. So it's SBI report. There are multiple reports. Government of India do not have a single number for black money. Black money is in multiple formats, right? So that is the power of black money. Black economy, parallel economy. We don't call it as black economy. We call it as a parallel economy. So that is the power of black money. And demonetization has removed a small percentage of the entire scenario. But COVID has created a less cash economy. More people are using UPI. But that is again a post-truth world. We are discussing purely in the emotional terms rather than with data. Cash is still the king. Recently, I have shared an article from Business Standard which clearly shows you how much money is being used and how cash is being used. A small percentage of the entire cash transactions are only happening in UPI platform. Majority is still the cash is king. So the real problem you have to understand is this: land, gold, and other activities are the places where black money will hide. Land, gold, and other assets are places where black money will hide. Elections is the time where black money is rotated. Every general election is an opportunity to rotate all the black money. Right? Thousands and thousands of crores are rotated in the name of elections. Where do you hide the black money? Land. Where do you rotate? Elections. Generally speaking, what is the cost of elections in India? General elections. That means every 5 years, one time election will come, right? I think in 2024, we have general elections. What is the cost that is incurred by government of India or as a parties, everyone? $50 crores.
It's very less.
It's around 900 to 1,000 crores.
So during a general election season, India spends not less than 60 to 70,000 crores in elections. 70,000 crores. So that is the amount that is rotated during the elections. Okay. Government of India will officially spend hardly, as you have mentioned, some amount of crores, 1,000 or 2,000 crores for management. But election times, the rotation itself is huge. Okay. So there are a lot of things you still need to incorporate, right? So collectively, the summary being, if a mains question will come, you will more or less try to defend demonetization because there is no empirical data to show all the side effects, or we will call them as anti-national reports. So there is no point in following them. We will only use RBI data. We will only use RBI data to show how much money has come back and what are the advantages of demonetization. Clear? Yes.
This is 18%. The cash circulation has increased more than
Before
demonetization.
Hmm.
But I don't know if there is an official backing for that.
Say again, RBI releases money in circulation every year, right?
Then
I think even Kedar filed an RTI out of curiosity, how much cash is rotated in the country. But RBI will release all the data.
then one of the goals of demonetization being transforming India into a cashless economy.
Less cash economy.
Less cash economy. Less cash economy.
Hmm.
Pre-demonetization, the cash was actually less.
Hmm.
Now the cash is actually more, like 18 trillion, which was supposed to be around 14 or 15 trillion. So cash circulation has indeed increased after
Who is
demonetization.
bothered? See, that's the theory, right? Demonetization is a success.
No, sir, but you were talking that there was no empirical data. So one goal being less cash economy is failure.
COVID. Because of COVID, cash transactions have increased.
Sir, but sir,
Do I need to make any sense? I have to justify something. I will justify, right? See, how will you hide 10 lakh rupees? In 100 rupee notes or 2000 rupee notes?
2000.
Which one is easy?
2000.
Who created 2000? When? Before demonetization or after demonetization? Why? Your goal is what? To bring out the hidden black money. What are you creating? To create a tool to hide easy black money. Who is talking about this? Simple. Post-truth. Right? You understand it, right? Think about it. If I have to carry 1 lakh rupees, all I have to do is carry 2000 rupee notes, right? This much I'm not done. Earlier, either in 500 it's bulky, 1000 also bulky, 2000 very simple. 20, right? 2000 rupees. Very easy. Get the idea? Yes. So again, this is an ongoing debate. Don't worry. I will discuss about the economy's impact on demonetization's impact on economy tomorrow. We'll continue the same discussion. Yes, I will also share the business standard article. Just go through that article. You will see the charts. It will be very interesting. Yes, we'll continue the discussion tomorrow.